Wizards. Mike McGarry's here as well from the Press of Atlantic City. And we got a lot to chew on here, Mike, as we had some interesting playoff games last night. But I think, Sixers, Wizards, obviously. But I would think that one of the big stories is the return Game 2, Knicks and Hawks. We saw a couple series go 0-2 that one, so we'll get into all of them. But first, I've heard a couple of national pundits think the Wizards are going to win this game tonight, Mike. So did you see anything in Game 1 that would give you some pause to think that the Sixers don't win this game tonight?
Not on the Sixers home court, no. I guess you could say if Joel Embiid gets in foul trouble again, if Tobias Harris doesn't score 28 points, maybe the Sixers have some problems. I don't think the Sixers bench played all that great in Game 1 outside of George Hill. But I just view the Washington Wizards as a bad matchup for the Philadelphia 76ers. I just don't think they have the size or the front court talent to deal with the Sixers.
Yeah, I mean, you look at, as what you said, the size. Embiid can probably – if Embiid plays more than 10 minutes in the first half, he could probably score 45 against this crew.
Yeah, absolutely. They don't have an answer for Embiid. They don't have an answer for Tobias Harris. If they're going to start, Westbrook and Neto and Beal and then bring in some short guys off the bench also, they're going to have some problems. I guess the theory could be, maybe the Sixers have a bad game. Washington can hit some threes. Beal can go off. He had 60 against the Sixers in one game. Maybe he can do it again. Maybe Westbrook plays much better than he played in Game 1. I think he had only about 16 points. So he's capable of getting 25 to 30. But overall, I still think it's a 5-game series, and I think Washington gets that win in Washington, not tonight.
Mike, you wrote about George Hill for the Press of Atlantic City at pressofatlanticcity.com, and when the Sixers got him, it was okay, and then no one really saw him. He only played a handful of games, and I'm not sure they used him the way that they wanted to use him because of injuries. Ben Simmons was out, and then when he came back, Shake Milton was out. So what do you think George Hill is providing to this team? What are you seeing from and some of the stuff that he's saying as well?
Well, I think he's provided a veteran leadership, veteran experience in the playoffs. Here's a guy who has been to the Eastern Conference Final twice with the Indiana Pacers and Frank Vogel as coach of that team. He's been to an NBA Final with the Cleveland Cavaliers. He's an acknowledged leader. Played with the Milwaukee Bucks last season. So I think how you saw him used, as I kind of wrote today, that trade never really had a chance, right? He got here hurt. He didn't play 3 months. He had the thumb surgery. When he came back, he admitted yesterday he wasn't in basketball shape. It took him a while to get in shape. That trade and George Hill's tenure with the Sixers is going to be judged starting with what he did on Sunday, which was pretty good. I mean, all you need to know is look at the minutes in the fourth quarter. George Hill played 7 minutes in the fourth quarter. Now, Doc said it was because the Wizards were scrambling, trying to trap. He gave him another ball handler. But you can put George Hill in at crunch time. I'd feel comfortable with him on the floor. Sixers up by 1, Sixers down by 1. You can put him on the floor, and he's your best option off that bench right now.
Yeah, it's interesting. As when they made that trade, it was, hey, they're going to start the game with Curry and Green, but late in games, you wonder if you'll see more Hill and Thibault because of defense if they have a lead. Now, Green's very important. And he's not as poor as a defensive player. Not that Curry's a poor defensive player, but Hill is a much tougher perimeter defender. And I think you might see more if they have leads, Hill kind of closing those games out instead of Curry.
Well, right. He gives you options, right, that you wouldn't have normally. I mean, he gives you an option. You can play him and put Thibault out there. You can play him in place of Curry. You can play him in place of Green. You can play Hill rather than Thibault if you need some more offense and ball handling. If you need experience, you can play him instead of Milton. So he just gives you more options. And like you said, the other thing with the trade, I think at the time, in January, there was a lot of debate. Do the Sixers need James Harden? Are they going to get James Harden? They don't get James Harden and they get George Hill. And everybody's like, oh, it's George Hill, not James Harden. But, right now, Hill, at least for one game, gave the Sixers exactly what they needed, and I would expect more of it throughout the playoffs.
All right, that's tonight, 7 o'clock, right here on 97.3 ESPN. Tom McGinnis on the call, Sixers-Wizards Game 2. Trae Young and the Knicks, this one, I mean, you would imagine that the Garden's going to be rocking tonight. I mean, they had playoff basketball for the first time in like 8 years there the other night, but they need this game number 2. Kind of give us what you think the atmosphere is going to be like in there.
Well, I think it'll be tremendous. I think it was crazy the other night, even watching it on television. They had 15,000 people at Madison Square Garden, which is about, 4 to 5 more than were in the Wells Fargo Center even the other night. And you talk about the Knicks, really a team that is starved for playoff success. They had that Carmelo Anthony team back in, I think it was 2013 or 14. But I think this Knicks team really came out of nowhere. It's really captured the imagination of the fan base. Really brought back memories of the 90s, but much like the 90s when Reggie Miller sashayed his way into Madison Square Garden and basically played like a WWE villain and caused so much heartbreak. Trae Young did it the other night, gave the crowd the shush shine and everything else. As the mayor of New York, de Blasio, talking fouls and stuff like that. So this is to steal a catchphrase, a must-win game for the New York Knicks. And it's simply they need a much better game out of Julius Randle. He's been, an MVP-type candidate all season, and he just did not play well in game one whatsoever.
Yeah, I mean, you watch them, and it's just like excruciating to watch them try to score. As you kind of said, kind of those 90s Knicks teams, they had Pat Ewing that could score a bucket if you need one. I know Randall's had a great year, but the game is so different to try to watch them try to score. It's just like, and then you got Trae Young on the other side, who's just, fabulous to watch score.
Yeah, I mean, the Hawks, played very well towards the end of the season. They played very well after they made that coaching change, right, to Nate McMillan.
Right.
They added Bogdanovich. The Hawks are sneaky good. I was talking to somebody today. I said, hey, if the Hawks get by the Knicks, that's going to be a tough series for the Sixers. The Hawks are long. They got some guys who can score. They can shoot from the perimeter. So they're a tough team right now. And, the Knicks will have their handful tonight. If they don't get tonight's game, obviously they're in a ton of trouble, basically. You might see a quick series there.
Yeah, that one should be fun. They got two good ones tonight in terms of anticipation. The building should be great in Philly and in New York. So we got, of course, the Sixers tonight on 97.3 ESPN. Brooklyn, now that was a different Brooklyn, right? That was a more team-oriented Brooklyn, and to me, that's a scary Brooklyn because in the first game, it was isolation, try to win it with the stars. You had Joe Harris score almost 30 last night.
Yeah, I watched the game, or I watched the first quarter, basically, and that's all you had to see. 40 points in the first quarter. The ball's moving beautifully. Joe Harris, three-point shooter, excellent. I think he had 5 or 6 threes. You know what stands out for me about the first quarter, and here's what scares me, this is why I picked Brooklyn to win it all. They scored 40 points in the first quarter last night, jumped out on the Celtics 40-26.
Right.
James Harden did not take a shot or score a point in that first quarter. They still got to 40 with one of the best scorers in NBA history. I think he had 5 assists in the quarter, but he didn't take a shot and he didn't score, and they got 40 points.
I said he was like a 90s point guard last night. That was like
exactly.
his, right? He was just James Harden, the facilitator last night.
Right, and that's what scares me about Brooklyn. Those 3 guys will have figured it out, the pieces around him. Now, Joe Harris isn't going to do that every night, but he's capable of having games like that. And, last night's first quarter, exhibit A of why I think Brooklyn is going to be so tough to beat. 40 points, no shots from James Harden.
Yep, that was a game. If you watched that one last night, you said, all right, now I see this Brooklyn team. I mean, not that you didn't before, but it was like, hey, they got these 3 guys. But they had a lot of people involved last night. That, to me, is how they win. The first game, they only scored 104, but they're playing an undermanned Celtics team. 104 might not get it done against the Bucks. Maybe not the Sixers.
Yeah, I don't think they shot the ball well in that first half. Now, here's the thing. They didn't shoot the ball well in the first half of game 1. They shot the ball on fire in game 2. So, probably going forward, you're going to get a mixture of those games going forward. But just so many weapons. Again, when you talk about the big 3, if one of the guy is off or playing facilitator, it's like they don't even skip a beat. I just think they're so tough to stop that they are going to outscore people. And they are playing a little bit more defense, and emphasis on a little bit more, but enough to get by.
Well, and then if you watched the night before what Milwaukee did to Miami, you're thinking, wow, they're hitting their stride. So that one, I mean, is really setting up for something interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. And it'll be interesting to see what the addition of Drew Holiday will mean in that season. for the Milwaukee Bucks. I think he's a huge upgrade for Milwaukee as we get deeper into the postseason. And they kind of, you look at that series, maybe Milwaukee survived that game one. We all talked Miami Heat culture, this and that. Then they come and win easy in game two. We'll see what happens down in Miami. If Milwaukee gets 1 out of 2 there, they might be on their way to, an easier time than we thought they would be in that series.
All right. And then, of course, Lakers win. I don't know, Chris Paul, if he's not – he always seems to get hurt in the middle of the series, and for every team he's on, it seems to be something. If he's out, I mean, man, I really thought that the Suns could do it.
If he's out and Anthony Davis is going to play like he did last night, that's going to be a tough one. You refer to Chris Paul back with the Houston Rockets when they have Golden State 3-2, and he gets hurt and misses Game 7, and Houston misses 500 threes in that game, and Golden State goes on and gets the NBA final. But you're right, Chris Paul is 35, 36, and he's been such a big part of the Suns' resurgence. If he can't be out there full strength and Anthony Davis is going to play like he played last night, the Lakers might survive that one. But, our guy Frank Vogel is coaching the Lakers. I just worry that the Lakers, it's going to be too much of a toll on them. They won the NBA championship in October. They come back. They got to play a play-in game. Now they got to grind their way plus Phoenix. I think they might get caught in one of these series.
That's a good point. And then the last one, I don't know if you were able to find the
NBA TV, yes.
The Mavericks-Clippers game last night, but the Clippers tank on purpose to get this matchup. They reap what they sow here, right?
Yeah, I mean, obviously what you look at now is you say, hey, there's something going on with the Clippers, blowing the 3-1 lead to Denver. Maybe it wasn't all Doc Rivers' fault last night or last year. Maybe he's not, he sort of became the fall guy for that. But there seems to be bigger issues with that ball club because that is a team that is not playing to its potential. As great as Luka is, a team with Paul George and Kawhi Leonard should not be losing, 2 home games in the first round of the playoffs.
Right, and not to mention they got Rondo on that team, who's like, championship guy. You pick up Rondo, you go to the finals.
Right. And they picked him up for experience to sort of give them a little playoff edge there, and so far it hasn't worked out. And right now they are in big trouble.
Mike McGarry from the Press of Atlantic City. Mike, give me an assessment of your thoughts on the way the Phillies have handled this Bryce Harper stuff.
Well, when it comes to professional sports teams, my personal theory is whenever they talk about injuries, I never believe them. So I don't care what they say, because how many times do we watch a guy say, okay, this guy's due back in 2 weeks and he's back in 4 weeks, or this guy has this, or he had this setback, they lay out a plan and it's all professional sports teams. Look at the Mets last night. Noah Syndergaard will be back in June. All of a sudden he's pitching a rehab start. His elbow hurts. Oh, it's no big deal. Yeah, right. So I don't get offended when Girardi was kind of playing coy about the injury. I just think this. I was at the game on Saturday night against the Red Sox, covered the game. I watched Harper strike out 3 times. I saw him ground weakly to first base. Anybody who was at the game, and I know that Alex Cora, the Red Sox manager, was at the game, he would say, that guy's not right. He's hurt. Something's up.
Well, when you strike out, how many times has he struck out in the last 15, 20 at-bats? I mean, it's just every single time.
I think he's 2 for his last 25 with 13 strikeouts. And the Red Sox obviously knew something was up on Saturday night because he came up in a key spot and they threw 3 straight fastballs down the middle of the plate and struck him on 3 pitches. So they knew he wasn't right. Everybody who saw them play wasn't right. If the Phillies are trying to be coy or try to not gain some sort of competitive edge, I can understand that. I don't get upset about it because my theory is, again, until I see the player back on the field, on the court, in the lineup, I don't believe anything the team says about when he's going to return.
All right, Mike McGarry, that's our time for today from the Press of Atlantic City. Check out pressofac.com for more from Mike, his must-win column, and he'll be back on Friday, and we'll obviously see the Sixers either up 1-1 or 2-0. We'll see all that unfold here tonight on 97.3 ESPN. All right, Mike, see you, man.
All right, we'll see you down the road. Thanks.
All right, he, like August, appeared via the Boardwalk Honda hotline.